Hello, everyone, and welcome to Off the Air Productions. I'm Ben Cason, and this is the Ben Cason Show. This is number one. This is the first time I'm going to try this, and it's just going to be just me talking about sports. Big week in sports coming up, and huge amount of sports going to be crammed into these next few months because of the coronavirus. So I want to get into some of the big things going on in sports, and let's start out with the obvious number one. The MLB season is starting. Opening day is today. This video is coming out on opening day. It's going to be a huge day for baseball. It's a magical day for me as a huge baseball fan. I'm a big Texas Rangers fan, always has been. That's been really a part of my DNA is Texas Rangers baseball. And opening day has always been kind of like a holiday, to be honest. It's been a day where I'll focus on, hey, the Rangers are playing at 7, and that takes up my whole day. It's been that way since I was 7 or 8 years old. And it was with me when I was a kid, and now that I'm an adult, it keeps the same magic. And specifically after this long delay that we've had here for opening day. It's been over 230 days, I believe, since our last baseball game when Daniel Hudson struck out Michael Brantley to end the World Series. So it's been a long time without baseball, and I'm really excited to get back to it and get a new season going. It's going to be weird, a couple different things going on with it, but it still has the same magic in my opinion, and I'm still just as excited now as I was when I was 7 or 8. My favorite opening day memory is back in 2010, the Texas Rangers played the Toronto Blue Jays. And so a couple Rangers fans might remember this call, but Jared Saltalamacchia, who was our catcher at the time, he hit this big walk-off hit at the end of the game. And Josh Lewin, who was the announcer at the time, gave us the classic, "Welcome to 2010" call. It was better than that I just did right there. But, that moment right there started off that season with a lot of hope for me as a Rangers fan. And obviously the Texas Rangers ran all the way to the World Series that year. So I'm very excited about this season coming up. I'm really excited to get into baseball and excited to escape the stress of life that's going on not being able to watch baseball, because obviously a lot of stuff's going on off the field, right? There's been, in baseball specifically, there's been the Astros scandal. There's been, obviously, the labor dispute, everything going on with coronavirus in the whole world, now with social justice issues. I mean, the world as it stands is pretty exhausting to be a part of, and so it's nice to have an escape of baseball to sit down and watch some baseball games, and for me, that's something that's huge, and I can't wait for it to be back. So you're not going to find a happier guy than me today. We have one heck of a start tonight because we've got Garrett Cole and Max Scherzer, Washington Nationals, New York Yankees. That's a pretty great opening night matchup. Baseball's back, 60-game sprint. That's what you got to know about this baseball season. I'm going to do a quick MLB preview. So 60-game sprint this year. Each team only plays 60 games, only within their region. So, for example, that's why we're seeing a Nationals-Yankees game, because the Nationals and the Yankees both play in the East. So the AL East will play the NL East, the AL Central plays the NL Central, and of course the AL West plays the NL West, and vice versa, plus their own division. So you're not going to see any Twins-Yankees this year. You're not going to see any Astros-Indians this year. Those teams are going to be separated because they're from the West, the Central, and the East. They won't see each other till the playoffs. It's going to be interesting. You're going to see only 9 teams this season, your team is, and you're going to have 60 games to do as well as you can. It's going to be interesting. No fans in the stadium. They're going to pump in crowd noise. We're going to have different regulations when we get into extra innings. That's a big difference this year. They're going to put a runner on second starting in the 10th inning to start the inning. It's interesting stuff. The DH in the National League. So these changes are going to make baseball a little bit different this year, but it's the same core game. And so I'm really excited about it. Let's get into it. So first off, the big thing about a 60-game season is hope springs eternal for every team. Even like if you're an Orioles fan or a Marlins fan or a Tigers fan or a Mariners fan right now, you're only playing 60 games. I mean, 60 games in the span of baseball is not much. I mean, it's the equivalent of, if you're talking NFL, 60 games, that would be them moving the NFL season to a 6-game schedule. How big would that change everything? It's huge. Because in baseball now, every pitch, every game is going to matter. You can't take a Tuesday off. You can't have a relaxing game against a team. Every pitch is going to matter because you've only got 60 games to separate yourself from the other teams. We've still got the same 12 playoff spots as of now. I mean, literally as of this second. There's been some rumors that they're going to change the playoff seedings, but their deadline is first pitch tonight, so we'll see what happens. As of this recording, there's been no change to it, so I'm going to make my predictions as if we're going to do the 12 teams in the playoffs. I'm really excited. Hope for every team, and I think it's going to be really tight races in each league. 60 games, everyone's going to be right in it. You're going to see teams in the playoff race all the way up to the end of the season, and it's going to make baseball a lot more fun because the last couple of years I felt like we've had a lot of, these are the clear top, these are the clear bottom, and there's a couple teams in the middle that are fighting for position. You're not going to see that this year. It's going to be a lot of teams in that same realm. The hot teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers, these legacy teams that are used to being in the playoffs and dominating, if you don't get off to a hot start this year, you could be in trouble. Like, genuinely could be in trouble. So I'm excited to see what happens because this season is going to be unique. It's going to be unique. It's going to be fun to watch, and I'm excited to get it back. So also, I wouldn't be stunned if there are ties in the standings as well by the end of the year. I think that's just something that we could see because, so few games. We might have some extra wildcard games to try and separate teams at the end of the year. I'm interested because those games are always fun to watch. Do or die, win or go home games. We'll see if we get some of them. So I'm going to go division by division. We'll talk about each team pretty quickly, and I'll give you my positioning for them. So start with the AL East. The AL East has a clear number one, in my opinion. The New York Yankees, they added Garrett Cole, and they are going to get a healthy Giancarlo Stanton to a team that already won 100-plus games last year. It's borderline unfair when it comes to the rest of the league because the New York Yankees are so deep, and they've got so much talent. They look to me as the best team in the AL. But I do like the Yankees a lot. It's a short year. It's going to be a lot about who's hot at the right time, but the Yankees have the best chance, in my opinion. So I'll take the Yankees number one in the East. Number two, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Rays. I think the Rays impressed me a lot last year. Tampa Bay, they almost upended the Astros in the first round. If you remember, they took them to 5 games. The Tampa Bay Rays don't do things the conventional way for baseball teams, and I kind of like it because they have this wealth of pitching depth. I mean, it's every single year you feel like they have 1 or 2 guys that just break out, while at the same time they take a lot of risks when it comes to their relievers and their position players of guys who maybe had a bad year, had a bad last couple years. They take a risk on them rebounding, and more often than not, the Rays have been right. They have a really good team that I think is one of the best in the American League as well. I think that the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be a force in the AL East. I'll take them second, and I think they'll get a wild card spot. Number 3, I'm going to put the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox and the Blue Jays, 3 and 4, are very close. I think that they are a matter of games between each other. I'm going to give the Red Sox the edge because Toronto's not going to have a home stadium this year because of Canada's rules for the coronavirus. So no comment on that. I mean, it's what they've got to do. It's a weird time. So Toronto, it sounds like they might be sharing Camden Yards with the Orioles, or they might even be at PNC Park in Pittsburgh. We'll find out. It's going to be weird for them not having a home stadium, and it's going to be weird for a lot of teams not having fans in the stadium. But for Toronto, it's going to be a little different. I also think Toronto is a little bit young when it comes to a lot of their talent compared to the Red Sox. The Red Sox, they lost Mookie Betts this offseason. That's the big number one. And then Chris Sale to a Tommy John surgery. But they still have a lot of players that were there for title runs. I look at JD Martinez is still there. You look at Andrew Benintendi is still there. Rafael Devers is still there. Xander Bogaerts is still there. So the Red Sox still have some pieces. The question for them is going to be pitching. The Boston Red Sox starting pitching is going to be interesting, to say the least. Nathan Eovaldi is going to have to be their ace, and Nathan Eovaldi is a guy who, he's hot and he's cold. He's injured and he's not. He's very, very fluctuating how good he is based on the year. This year, they need to have a good year from him. I don't think the playoffs are out of the realm for Boston or Toronto, by the way. I think both teams could get hot and make a playoff run. I just don't think that they will because of the toughness of Tampa and New York. The East teams having to go against each other. This is the NL East and the AL East. It's going to be brutal because you've got a lot of great teams. Really, the Orioles and the Marlins are the only two that I look at between those two leagues that don't have a playoff chance, basically. It's going to be really interesting to see those teams battle. I don't think that Toronto is here yet. Watch out for them next year and the year after that with Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. and those guys. I think Boston just has too many injuries this year. They also just lost Colin McHugh for the year because he decided to sit out for coronavirus. So their pitching is going to be a question mark. So because of those question marks, I've got Boston 3, Toronto 4. I've got Baltimore in 5, and Baltimore has been in a perpetual rebuild for a couple of years, but I think they're starting to see the light coming at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. They've got some good prospects coming up. Adley Rutschman, that catcher they got number 1 a couple of years ago from Oklahoma State, he's going to be very good. I can't wait to see him in the bigs, but I guess we'll wait a couple of years on that. Baltimore did find a bit of a diamond in the rough in John Means. He's a starting pitcher, and he's going to get their opening day ball. I'm pretty excited about him starting for them. I'm interested to see what happens with this team in the future. I mean, this year, there's no real nice way to say it. I don't think that they're really in the same ballpark as those other teams in the division. So they're 5. So let's talk about the AL Central. So I like the Yankees a lot, like I mentioned in the East. But the Minnesota Twins are going to have the number 1 seed in the American League. And here's why. Minnesota is all in. They're pushing their chips in the middle of the table. They just picked up Josh Donaldson. This team hit the most home runs ever last season. This is a great roster that they have, and they are sticking with it, and they're going hard for a championship. In their bubble of the AL Central and the NL Central, really the only other team in that bubble you could say is really going for it all in is the Reds, and the Reds weren't good last year. I think that the Minnesota Twins have the easiest schedule of the contenders this year. I think they're going to be able to pound their own division, and I think they're going to be able to take advantage of the NL Central, and I think Minnesota has a chance to win 40, maybe even 45 games this year. I'll take them to have the best record in all of baseball this year, and they'll be the number one seed because I like Minnesota a lot. They're on par with the good teams in the league, and they're going to have the easiest road. So I like Minnesota a lot. Then number 2 in the AL Central, I'll take the White Sox. The rest of these teams in the AL Central, the White Sox and Indians, they're both, I'm going to say, a little bit under 500 this year. I just don't love them. I think the White Sox are just like the Blue Jays, I just said. A couple years away. Luis Robert is just getting into the bigs. Michael Kopech not going to even play this year. For the White Sox, they made a couple nice additions in Grandal and obviously Dallas Keuchel, but I think they're still a couple years away from being a true contender. I think this year is a year where they might open some eyes. I think they establish themselves second in the AL Central and set themselves up as the heir apparent to this Twins team, but I just don't think this is the year for them. I think it's too early. I think they're too young, but again, we'll see. Short season, they get hot, they could very well make a run. The Cleveland Indians are such a weird franchise for me because the Cleveland Indians have Francisco Lindor on offense and not much else. Nothing against the rest of those guys, but Jose Ramirez fell off a cliff last year. I like Mercado a little bit in the outfield, but you look around at the Cleveland Indians roster compared to the 2016 Cleveland Indians, who almost took out the Chicago Cubs in that World Series. They've gone downhill a lot. They've lost a ton of players, and last year it showed because they missed the playoffs and barely could score on offense. So I'm looking forward to this upcoming season for the Indians because the Indians are going to have a crossroads when it comes to Francisco Lindor. One of my favorite superstars in baseball. Francisco Lindor is about to be a free agent at the end of next season. So his value is at a peak right now, especially like say at the deadline and Cleveland's a little bit below 500. You could flip Lindor to a team and get a ton back and restart your rebuild, which I think is going to have to be coming, unfortunately. We'll see what they do. If they keep trying to lukewarm contend. This offseason was weird. They made a couple contention moves, and they also made moves like, getting rid of Corey Kluber to the Rangers for what looks like maybe just about nothing. I like their signing to Shields and Emmanuel Clase, but Clase already got suspended for PEDs, so we'll see. I'm interested in the Indians because of the dilemma with Lindor and a lot of the other superior franchises in baseball, like I'm talking about, Philadelphia, Los Angeles Dodgers, Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, the teams with just wealths of prospects and with really good big league teams. You're paying attention to Cleveland too because you might have a chance to get Lindor at the deadline or at the end of the year. I'll take them 3. Now the Royals and Tigers at 4 and 5. Not much to say here about both of these teams. I don't like them that much because they're both just on complete rebuilds. The Royals have one of my favorite up the middle tandems in Whit Merrifield and Adalberto Mondesi. They're really solid. I like them both. I think Mondesi's going to be better this year. They're a treat to watch, but really, for the Royals, that's about it that I think is great. Their pitching rotation is very weak. Danny Duffy's their number 1. It's not 2014 anymore. There's not much else to say. The Royals aren't that great. Detroit last season didn't have a player who hit more than 15 home runs, I believe. So their offense just isn't there. Hopefully Miguel Cabrera, I like him a lot, obviously. I hope that he would be able to figure it out and play better this year, but they're another team that's in transition. They're trying to find which blocks to build on and which ones they're not going to be able to get playing time to. Both of these teams, though, exciting young prospects coming up that I'll be paying attention to. I don't think this is the year for either of them. Okay, so that brings up the AL West. Now, the AL West, the Astros have ran the division the last couple years. Now, the biggest winner, if there is a winner in the whole coronavirus suspension, everything, are the Houston Astros, because the Houston Astros just went through the most tumultuous offseason I can remember. Accused of cheating, their manager gets fired, players are under duress, everyone in baseball is calling them out, and this is going to be a big problem for Houston whenever the season started. They were going to be booed everywhere they went. However, now they don't have to worry about that because there's no fans. We've had a delay, and with 60 games, I don't know what teams are going to be willing to hit them to put runners on base when runners are going to matter so much in a 60-game season. So Houston, the big winner from the delay, I still don't love the Astros. Also, not to mention, Justin Verlander was going to be injured, and he's now been given the time to come back and be ready for the opening of the season. So Houston, despite being in a little bit better of a position now than they were if the season had started in April, I still think that there is some residual effect when it comes to their cheating scandal, because I think teams are going to see them at the top, and they're going to do everything they can to knock them down in those games. Those are going to be some passionate games. If you look at the comments that baseball players are doing about the Astros cheating scandal, I mean, it was definitely some accusations there. And so you've got some angry players against the Astros. They're going to have them up there. They're going to want to beat them. I think that they are going to be able to get over some of those teams. I don't think they're going to be as good as they usually are. So I'm going to take the Oakland A's to win the division. Oakland Athletics baseball under Billy Beane, always fielding a competitive team. It feels like they've got the best left side of the infield in baseball with Chapman and Simeon. I think that the Oakland Athletics, with a healthy Sean Manaea this year, with a healthy AJ Puck, who I think is going to really take off, I think they're going to pitch a lot better. I think they're going to hit well, and I think they're going to edge out the division over Houston. I'll still keep Houston at 2, but I mean, I'm a big Rangers fan to get my bias out of the way, but don't sleep on the Rangers, and I'm going to put them at 3. I think the Texas Rangers are a game or 2 out of the playoffs this season. But the Texas Rangers went and got Corey Kluber to go alongside Mike Minor and Lance Lynn. Don't sleep on these guys, because the Texas Rangers, they have a new stadium, which is another thing. It's an indoor stadium, so the Texas Rangers have a new advantage as well with that, because it's a 60-game season where teams haven't been to the ballpark yet. Every game is going to matter. Every missed fly ball is going to matter. I've been watching some of the preseason stuff for the Rangers. That roof and the shadows, it plays a little weird. And so teams are not going to have any experience with it. They're going to show up to Texas. They're going to need wins, and they're going to have a tough time with that roof, I'm going to guess, at least at first. And that little bit of hesitation of a new stadium might help Texas, because they've been practicing in it. They've got the big 3 at the top with Lynn, Minor, and Kluber. I can't think of a better top 3 Rangers pitchers in the history of Texas Rangers baseball. So these guys are going to have to come out and perform. I think Texas, the big thing that I would say they are missing is a big power bat in the middle to complement Joey Gallo. Because Joey Gallo, I think, is going to hit, in a regular season, 30 home runs, 100 RBIs. He's that kind of a player. I don't know who the other guy is, though, because I think they need more than one big basher in the middle. I think they got a lot of good OBP guys in Chu and Andrews. I think that Willie Calhoun is probably the guy I would highlight as the guy who could be that guy for the Rangers. But again, it's just circumstances. He got hit in the face with a fastball back in spring training. He broke his jaw. And with that, I mean, who knows the psychological effects of that, because that sounds like something, if I was playing baseball, I would have a really tough time staying in the box. We'll see how Calhoun is adjusted. And then not to mention, now that he's healthy and ready to go here in our new training camp, he's been dealing with hip flexor problems, which has made it where he hasn't gotten the at-bats. I think he needs to get back used to standing in the box and, staying in on the inside pitch. So Willie Calhoun, question marks for me this season. I still believe in him in the long term. We'll see. I love the Rangers. New stadium, new jerseys, hopefully a new energy around this team. Corey Kluber helps in the rotation. I think Texas has a lot of positive energy compared to the Astros' negative energy, but I think the Astros still have a little bit more talent, so I'll give the Astros the wild card by an inch. All right, the 4 is the Angels. The Angels, Mike Trout's just, he's grinding on a team that hasn't given him the support he needs. It's weird. The LA Angels' starting rotation is Shohei Ohtani and a bunch of nobodies, it feels like. Andrew Heaney's not bad, but as a whole, that rotation is duct tape and glue. You're just trying to hold it together, get through games, let Mike Trout do his greatness. I don't think the Angels have enough this year. Justin Upton is a big question mark for me. I want to see Justin Upton have a full season and mash alongside Mike Trout. If he can, hey, you never know. Joe Adell is also going to be a guy who's going to get more playing time this year, and he's my pick for the AL Rookie of the Year because I like Joe Adell a lot. I don't think they're going to be enough, though, to get him over the hump. I think they stay mediocre. They stay at 4. But again, a hot streak could get him in the playoffs. You never know. Number 5 is the Mariners. The Mariners are another team that's rebuilding. The Mariners lost kind of the identity of their team in Felix Hernandez. It's weird to say that because Felix Hernandez has struggled the last couple of years, but he represented something for Seattle of that era that, that bygone era where they were really close for a couple of years and couldn't get in the playoffs. This playoff drought for Seattle just keeps going, and I think it's going to continue this year. Mitch Haniger's going to have a good year for them to compete. I think that the Seattle Mariners are 2-3 years away. I like their system, but they're still 2-3 years away. So again, rebuilding, they're in the 5. So that's the AL. So again, playoffs for the AL are the Twins at 1, Yankees 2, A's at 3, then the Rays at 4, Astros at 5. And then the playoffs for that's going to go where you see the Astros and the Rays will play in the wild card game. I'll take the Rays. The Rays, as the wild card, will go play the number 1 Twins. I'll take the Rays in 5. I like the Rays a lot. They're a dangerous playoff team with that rotation. That's nothing against the Twins. I think the Twins are elite when it comes to a top 5 team in baseball. But I just like the Rays. They're a nightmarish playoff team to have to face. Then I'll take the Yankees over the A's in 4. Then the Yankees will play the Rays in the ALCS. It'll be a hard-fought battle, but I'll take the Yankees in 7. So I'll take the Yankees out of the AL. It's going to be an interesting year in the American League. Now, the National League East, I typically would take the Braves here far and away. I love the Braves. I love what they've been doing. Ronald Acuna Jr. is an animal. He's my MVP pick this year. But the question for me is, how will they rebound to Freddie Freeman's coronavirus and how much he struggled with it, and now that he's back, how does that affect team morale? Nick Markakis decided to take the year off after hearing how bad it was for Freeman. How will that affect this squad? Will they come together, or is it going to be kind of a hesitation thing this year for them? I don't know. I'm still going to stick by the Braves in the East, but not by as much as I used to think. I think they barely pulled out. They have better pitching, and their lineup is dynamite all throughout still. So I'll take the Braves, but it'll be close. The rest of the NL East, a couple games could separate them. I mean, that's how good these other teams are. I'm going to take the Phillies at 2 because I like Bryce Harper, and I think that Philadelphia is going to have an advantage in the rotation because I really like Aaron Nola. Jake Arrieta is going to be back, and Zach Wheeler. That's a good rotation for them. And obviously, a few other guys they're rotating in, like Velasquez and all the rest of those guys. So I think they're going to have an advantage when it comes to that. Phillies, I'll take them going second and getting a wild card. Also, Andrew McCutchen's back. That's another good thing for Philadelphia. McCutchen back, full health. I think they're having some positive momentum. Philly sneaks into the playoffs as the wild card. I'll take the reigning champion Nationals third in the East, narrowly missing the playoffs. And Anthony Rendon's loss looms large for the Washington Nationals. He's a big addition for the Angels. He really helped them when it came to getting on base and driving in runs. He was incredible. So his loss, plus the loss of Ryan Zimmerman, is going to really put this team in a spot where they're going to need other guys to step up. Juan Soto's a beast. We all know that. But who's going to be his running mates out there? We'll see. I'm looking forward to the upcoming season for the Nationals because they do still have one of the best rotations in baseball. Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, those guys are all still there. So they have the pieces there on the pitching side. The question is, can the offense score enough runs to get them in? Interesting note about the Nationals, if we only had a 60-game season last year, the Nationals would have missed the playoffs, and they would have had the same record as the Tigers through 60 games. So that's just giving you an idea of how the extra 100 games can affect a baseball season. So you never know with this season, with the Nationals, who's going to be hot and who's not. But I'll take them 3. I'll take the Mets 4. I like the Mets pieces in general, but already I'm getting that New York Mets feel. The last couple of years, you know what Stephen A. Smith says about the Cowboys, what can go wrong will go wrong? I feel that way about the New York Mets the last couple of years. Since the World Series run that they've had. That was 2015. They seem to have pieces in place, and they just, stuff goes wrong. It's hard to explain, but I have a feeling, again, this is going to be one of those years. They're going to have no Syndergaard. Sounds like no Stroman for a little bit. Those are going to be big losses. Question for me is this offense going to be good enough to carry this team? Because they're going to pitch okay. DeGrom's a beast, but behind him is a lot of question marks. And for the Mets, Pete Alonso was an awesome last year, man. I like Pete Alonso, but I'm worried that he'll have a sophomore slump with pitchers adjusting to what he was doing. Do you remember Cody Bellinger in his second year or in the playoffs? He went through a little bit of a slump as well before taking off last year. I think Pete Alonso will follow a very similar trajectory. Yoenis Cespedes, I don't know what to expect from him. It's a good thing for him that we have a DH in the NL this year because I don't know if he'd be able to play the field. So the Mets, a lot of question marks. They have the pieces in place. Again, I think they could be hot and they can make the playoffs. They're one of those teams, but I'll take them 4 in the East. And then 5 is the Marlins. The Marlins are still rebuilding. They're getting some good pieces in place. Alcantara on the mound for the Marlins is a pitcher that not a lot of people know of, but you should go watch some of him because he's a pretty impressive arm. I think Sixto Sanchez, who's a younger guy coming up for the Marlins, Hopefully he gets some time on the mound this year. I'd like him to win the NL Rookie of the Year, so he's kind of my pick for that. He's gotten comparisons to Pedro Martinez. Obviously, that's not fair to him to try and be Pedro Martinez, but he's got a lively fastball. They got him back in that trade with the Phillies that sent them JT Realmuto. Sorry, I can't talk. That was last year. I think Sixto Sanchez is going to be another guy who gets a lot of pitching for the Marlins this year. Miami, they're just not quite there when it comes to the offense. I think that they're making progress, though. I'm not out on the Marlins when it comes to this rebuild. They're making progress. I think this year they'll be better than they were the last couple of years when it comes to winning percentage, and they'll give teams tougher times than they used to, but they'll still be a little bit out. Okay, so that's the East. Now the Central. The NL Central, I genuinely think that the top 4 teams could win it because it's that razor thin of a margin. Now, this year, based on the talent that I see on the teams, the Chicago Cubs should win the division. But I'm not going to pick them to win the division because the Chicago Cubs seem to underachieve over and over again since their title run. It's weird. Ask a Cubs fan. Ask them what they've been doing these last couple of years. They had no real excuse for losing the division last year. They fell apart late. Year before that, they had the division seemingly in hand. They fell apart late, and they got stuck to a wild card game where they lost to the Rockies. And they only scored 1 run against Colorado. It's been a weird couple of years for Chicago where they just, since the title, I felt like they kind of rested on their laurels for a little bit. Now they got to put their foot on the gas pedal. And it doesn't help that their management is trying to cut contracts, and Chris Bryant's being talked about being traded the whole offseason, and we'll see. So I've got the Cubs actually at 3 in the division. I'll take the Cardinals 1 because of Cardinals magic. People who watch baseball a lot, you know what I'm talking about. Every year they just have a couple pitchers and a couple hitters just come out of nowhere and have career years for them. It's credit to their organization. I know it sounds cheap to say that, but legitly, go look. I mean, it's just over and over again. The Cardinals have these kind of things happen. Jack Flaherty had a great year last year, so I expect him to have a good year this year. Carlos Martinez is a secret weapon for them. They can't figure out if they want him in the rotation or bullpen. He's going to have a really good year, I think, because he's just got some of the best stuff I've seen in a while, man. Good fastball, great running slider. I like the Cardinals when it comes to their pitching. When it comes to their lineup, Paul Goldschmidt is still there, and Yadier Molina, this could be his last ride. We'll see. I think that's going to motivate the Cardinals as well. Short season, the Cardinals are just my gut pick for this spot. They won the division last year. They're my gut pick for this year. I'll take them in a narrow margin over my number 2, which is the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds went for it this offseason. They went and got Nick Castellanos, and that was a really big addition for them. And they also got Mike Moustakas, who they're going to play, I think it's second base, it sounds like. So 2 big additions to the lineup. Helps with a lineup that is inconsistent. Not that they can't get it done. They're just a little inconsistent. Joey Votto's over at first base still. He's a little older, but he still provides that veteran leadership and can get on base for them. I think Cincinnati, the real strength of them will be the rotation. Luis Castillo on the mound is really good. Sonny Gray is there, and he's really good. Trevor Bauer is going to be pretty motivated this year. I think he's also a stud. So the rotation for the Reds, plus a lineup that's added some good pieces to it. I'm looking forward to this upcoming season. I've got the Reds 2, and I've got them taking a wild card spot. So I've got them and Philadelphia as the wild cards. Chicago's 3. I think Anthony Rizzo, watch out for a great year from him. If you've seen pictures of him, he's in outstanding shape. I mean, oh my goodness. I think Yu Darvish as well is another guy that I'm looking at to have a fantastic season. But Chicago just can't put it all together. They're aging. They seem to be resting on their laurels a little bit the last couple of years. I'd love to see them come out here and kill it, win 42 games, be the 1 seed, and run it to another World Series. I would love to see it because they're an entertaining team to watch when they're on. When they've got Kyle Schwarber, they've got Javier Baez, they've got Almora in center field. He's one of my favorite underrated players, by the way. Ian Happ could break out, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Wilson Contreras. There's a lot of really cool, fun-to-watch baseball players in Chicago. And when Chicago's going, they're a team that people get behind. The problem is that they just have not been that team the last couple of years. I'd love to see it, but for now, they're the 3. The number 4 is Milwaukee, and this is more of I just like the other 3 teams better than them a little bit. Milwaukee, I don't know how they win every year with the pitching that they have. I mean, they run out guys, and their rotation's not that much better. A lot of turnover when it came to their players this year and last year. They still have Yelich. They're still going to be able to score runs. Ryan Braun's going to be able to DH. That's going to help them. But I don't think Milwaukee has the pieces to put it all together. They could because it's a crazy year and they can make the playoffs. I think that a part of their soul probably died last year with that game in Washington where they were up. They had their relief ace on, And then the error in the outfield, I can't even remember the guy's name, but the right fielder, he missed it, let it go to the wall. Washington got past him in the wild card game, and that outfielder got shipped out to San Diego. So I don't know what effect that's going to have on the Brewers. I'm going to say they drop all the way to 4. But by all the way, I still expect them to be around 500. This is going to be a tough, very close matchup when it comes to these teams right there in the middle. I don't see any of them blowing anybody out when it comes to a 40-win season. I think all of those teams will be between 27 and 34 wins, those top 4. And then number 5 is the Pirates, and the Pirates are it's Josh Bell at first base. He's got some power, but the Pirates as a whole, they're just another team where a lot of things have gone wrong for them. They looked like they were starting to rebuild a couple years ago, and then they changed course out of nowhere, and they traded for Chris Archer. I'll talk about this later in the podcast, but that trade set them on a bad path, and last year they just were trotting out guys and losing games. I think we'll see the same this year. They're the clear 5 in the division. All right, now to the NL West. The NL West features the LA Dodgers. The LA Dodgers have the deepest, best roster in baseball, in my opinion. Sorry, Yankees fans. I just love the Dodgers. They've got Mookie Betts. They've got Cody Bellinger in the outfield. They are deep all around. The addition of the DH in the NL, surprisingly, helps them over these teams in their division because they have so much depth. They can put Max Muncy at DH, and they're not going to lose anything. So the Dodgers, with that and a combination of their great starting pitching, are still here, and they're still very good. They lost Hyun-Jin Ryu. I was never the biggest Hyun-Jin Ryu fan. He pitched to good ERAs a couple years. Last year, he was top 5 in Cy Young, but he's just not... He wasn't a dog at the top of the rotation for me, for the Dodgers. You never saw him in the big games coming out and really performing to the best of his abilities. In fact, you more often saw him getting injured or being taken out early in those games. So, not that they won't miss him. I think that the addition of Mookie Betts far outweighs the subtraction of Hyun-Jin Ryu. They were planning to replace Ryu with David Price, and David Price is going to take the year off for coronavirus. So, here's the problem, though, because the Dodgers are so deep as well, someone's going to pick up that slack. Julio Urias is going to be the guy for me, I think, because the left-hander, if you remember a couple years ago, he was the talk of the league before he had a Tommy John surgery. I think he'll be the guy this year. Watch out for Walker Buehler. He could be the Cy Young this year. Clayton Kershaw's still there. He's still great, no matter how many clickbait articles about him choking the postseason you read. I like the Dodgers a lot. Number 2 in the West are the Padres. Now, the rest of the NL West, I'm not crazy about any of these teams. I think the Padres finish a little bit below 500. Fernando Tatis Jr. is going to have a great year. He's another guy. Him and Acuna are the 2 guys, if you were going to ask me, who do I want to start a franchise for the next 10 years with? Those are the 2 guys that come to mind first. Then obviously Mike Trout. Fernando Tatis Jr. is going to have a big year, I think. But the Padres, again, I think they're a lot like Toronto I was talking about earlier. They're a lot like the White Sox I was talking about earlier. A lot of pieces. I don't think that they're quite there yet. And they're on their way, though, and they'll establish themselves as second, and then watch out for next year's Padres. This year, I'm not quite going to take them yet. Then, number 3 is the Diamondbacks. Arizona, they went and got Madison Bumgarner. They went and got Starling Marte to go along with their team. Last year's Diamondbacks surprised me and won a lot more games than I thought they were going to. This year, I don't think they're going to do the same thing. I think that they're building off of the pieces they've decided to build with, I'm not as crazy about them as everybody else. They just don't do it for me. I think that the Diamondbacks, they're going to be interesting because the Diamondbacks are either going to be those guys all step up and then these new guys come in and add to it and they push forward, or what I'm going to project is a lot of the guys who broke out last year, Ketel Marte, David Peralta, those guys are going to start to decline a little bit. And honestly, Madison Bumgarner hasn't been the same guy for 2 years. I wish that he would be back to, prime 2015 Giants form. But he hasn't been the last couple of years. Ask a Giants fan. He has an ERA about 4. I'm hoping that he can bring it back down and have a great year for them. But I'm going to take them 3. The Rockies are number 4. Colorado, they have Nolan Arenado there, and Nolan Arenado wants to trade out. I don't blame him. They're moving away from contending. And Colorado, it's a tough spot to pitch. I get it. But Kyle Freeland blowing up last year hurt them so much when it came to not only their actual on the field performance, but also just the mentality of that team. Kyle Freeland was the guy the year before. I thought that Kyle Freeland deserved some Cy Young votes back in 2018, but he didn't get any of them, But Kyle Freeland is a guy who I really hope can bounce back this year for them. If he can bounce back, Herman Marquez can have a great year, and then they can find a third guy in the rotation. Maybe John Gray come out and really pitch well for Colorado. Watch out, because this team in the Mile High Air, they can score, get those guys going. They'll be in good shape. That's a ton of ifs. I don't really know if they're going to be able to do it. Every year it seems like, and you look back in the history of the Rockies, like go back to 2010, and we're like, Jhoulys Chacin, he's the guy. Watch out, Jhoulys Chacin, beast. And he has a couple good years, and then he gets shelled, gets traded away. And he's been all right since then, obviously. Then you go, remember Alex White? He was an old Rockies pitcher. Drew Pomeranz was a Rockies guy who they got for Ubaldo Jimenez, and he struggled there, went and pitched well in San Diego. Colorado just seems like a perpetual cycle of, Jeff Hoffman, he's another one, sorry. They seem like a cycle of, here's our young pitchers, push them out, have a little success, and then they get shelled. I'm hoping that ends soon for them if they want to compete. I don't think it will. If I'm Nolan Arenado, I'm still requesting a trade out of there because Colorado's moving backwards. They're number 4. The Giants are 5. And the Giants, another team that seems like a shell of their previous selves. They are holding on to, Johnny Cueto and Jeff Samardzija in the rotation, Evan Longoria at third base, Hunter Pence at DH. They're not going to have Buster Posey this year, but if it was 2014, I'm all in. I'm pushing my chips to the middle on that Giants team, but it's not 2014 anymore. They're getting old. They need to start making transitions. I think they will. I'm hoping we get to see some Joey Bart at catcher this year for the Giants, but they'll be number 5 in the NL West. So that's all of baseball. I went through all the teams. So that takes us to the NL playoffs, where in the wild card, it's the Reds and the Phillies, and I'll take the Phillies over the Reds. Then the Phillies will go play the Dodgers, who are the number 1. I'll take the Dodgers sweep there. Dodgers get through them. Then you'll have Braves and Cardinals. And last year's Braves-Cardinals was a great series up until Game 5, where the Cardinals scored 10 in the first inning. I'll take the Braves in 5 games. I think that they'll switch the script, and win that series. Then we'll have Braves-Dodgers in the NLCS. I'll take the Dodgers in 6. So it brings up the Dodgers-Yankees World Series. Great World Series. Ton of star power. I'll take the Dodgers in 7. I think they get it done this year. Mookie Betts is the piece that pushes that team over the top, and that's my official prediction. So I've got Dodgers going to win the World Series in 7 games over the Yankees. Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to this season. Again, a lot of stuff could change. Going to be an interesting year. I'm looking forward to it. And don't sleep on the Rangers. I'm a little biased, but don't sleep on the Rangers when it comes to the AL West. So the MVP pick, by the way, I'll take Mike Trout in the AL, Ronald Acuna in the NL. Cy Youngs, I'll take Tyler Glasnow of the Rays in the AL, and I'll take Walker Buehler of the Dodgers in the NL. So that's my season preview. All right, so now let's switch gears to this. We've got some news from the NFL today. Adam Schefter, he announced that the Washington football team will actually go by the Washington football team now. I don't know if you've seen this, but obviously that team has switched their name. And I want to go ahead and say right now on this podcast that I'm going to officially throw my support behind the name the Washington Red Tails. Now, the Washington Red Tails would be a big rebrand. I've been a supporter of their name change for a long time for that Washington club. And I love their color scheme. They can keep the color scheme. And the Washington Red Tails, they celebrate the Tuskegee Airmen, who are a pretty awesome part of history, are the first African-American military aviators in the U.S. Armed Forces. So the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II, they had crimson tails painted onto their planes, and they were actually one of the most effective escort squads for American bombers when it came to going over Italy and into Germany. And a lot of them were given tons of awards after, and is a real step forward for African Americans in the U.S. Armed Forces. So I love the Red Tails as the name for Washington. We'll see what they decide. As it stands, though, right now it looks like they're going to stick with the name the Washington Football Team for a little bit until they figure out where they want to go. So at least we're making some progress there. I like the Red Tails, but there's a lot of other good names out there. I just want to go ahead and say that's where I want to be at when it comes to my opinion on it. But also, I just want to take a second and comment about what it says about football, about the Washington name change. Because the Washington Football Team, they didn't change their name until FedEx said, we're going to take our name off the stadium if you don't change it. And until Nike said, hey, we're not going to be associated with your apparel. We've had years of, Native American leaders and just cultural leaders and people in the United States talking about how it's kind of a slur, what it used to be. And how, we don't like it as the thing. I've been a proud supporter of that for a long time. And it really says something to me that Dan Snyder and those guys, they decided to make this change about a week after the corporate sponsors pulled out. I think it says a lot about where priorities are at for this name change. So I hate to say it, the timing of it it frustrated me, I'll be honest. But nonetheless, it's a good change. Hopefully we'll have the Washington Red Tails as my pick, but obviously a lot of other good names. That was a quick aside. Now I want to get into a quarterback in the division with the Washington football team, the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott. The extension deadline just passed. He's going to be signing a franchise tender, 1 year, about $30 million. He didn't get an extension. He was apparently offered 5 years, $175 million by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. They couldn't come to a deal, and I honestly am a little bit befuddled here. Dak Prescott, I think he's going to regret not taking the deal. Now, first off, I want to say, I don't mind Dak betting on himself this year. He could very well prove me wrong, and he could go get a $250 million extension, however much he wants, after a great year this year. But I think Dak Prescott should have taken the money he was offered, because this season is going to be really, really big for him. He has every weapon a QB would need. I mean, Dak Prescott, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys right now, you've got Zeke Elliott at running back. He's outstanding. A great offensive line. When it comes to his receiving core, I'd say it's the best in the NFL. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. Whew, I mean, that's deadly. They still have a good tight end, and what's that guy's name? Yeah, but they've got a solid tight end. And on defense, they've still got DeMarcus Lawrence, Jordan Lewis, Chidobe Awuzie, Leighton Vander Esch, and there's still a lot of pieces there. The defense is, at the very least, top half of the NFL. And the Dallas Cowboys don't have Jason Garrett as a scapegoat anymore. That's another thing. And this is going to be big for Dak Prescott. So, even despite everything that he's got around him, Dak Prescott's going to have to prove that he can win. And I don't know if he's going to be able to. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if he's going to be able to. If he can, and if he can elevate that team, maybe it will have been a smart decision to walk away from that 5-year extension. But I think a great QB who earns that big amount of money elevates their team and rises to the challenges that they face in front of them. They get it done in these situations. Dak Prescott's Cowboys last year went 8-8. I mean, they went 8-8. The Dallas Cowboys, if you look at that roster, tell me that roster should go 8-8, and I'll tell you you're crazy, because they have so much talent on that team. They somehow went 8-8. Jason Garrett was given almost all of the blame by people, and I hate that, because Dak Prescott, if he's a truly elite or great quarterback, if he's in that top tier that deserves to be paid this kind of money, I think you win more games. And you're saying, but Ben, Dak was second in the league in pass yards. Ben, he was fourth in the league in touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, those felt like empty calories to me. I mean, you watch him, it was like, when he played the Dolphins, he threw the ball fantastic. Whew, love to see it. When he was playing Washington, oh, wow, guy's incredible. Whenever they played the Rams late in the year, that was the only game really I was impressed by him. I was like, okay, all right. But whenever you play teams that challenged him early, Dak Prescott couldn't get over those challenges. Let me go through a few of them. So Dallas, first off, to preface this, was favored in 15 of their 16 games. The only game they weren't favored in was at New England. Every other game this season, the odds makers, they were like, all right, the Dallas Cowboys, we've got them in this game because of the talent they have. Nonetheless, they went 8-8. I think a great quarterback beats New Orleans whenever they don't have Drew Brees. Remember that game, 12-10 in favor of the Saints. Prescott had a late drive, I think 3 minutes left, couldn't get any points out of it. Listen, this is not against Teddy Bridgewater, but you can't score 10 points against the Saints and expect to win. Then we go over to the 0-5 Jets team. Are you kidding me? Are you telling me if you put Russell Wilson in there instead of Dak Prescott, do you think the Cowboys lose 24-22 to the Jets? No. There's no way, in my opinion. At Chicago, when Chicago was already out of it with Mitch Trubisky at QB, Cowboys lost that game when they needed it, 31-24. At the Eagles, this is the big one. I mean, at the end of the year, this game was basically for the division. If the Cowboys win, they won the division 17-9. You scored 9 points on the Eagles. They couldn't stay healthy to save their life on the secondary. Dallas Cowboys couldn't get it done nonetheless. Dak Prescott's the QB for that team. At New England, they lost 13-9. I'm a big Patriots fan. I'm a big Belichick fan. But a great QB wins that game. We saw Mahomes do it for the Chiefs. We saw Watson do it for the Texans against New England, where they are able to overcome late. Dak had 2 or 3 chances in the second half to score. And if you remember that game, some of New England's points came off of a Dak Prescott fumble. Dak Also threw a pick to Stephon Gilmore across the middle whenever he was just shadowing Amari Cooper. The Patriots defense is great, but if Dak Prescott's also great and worth this money, he elevates and wins that game. And then the Vikings, 28-24, yet another late chance. Couldn't get it done. Vikings drove down and scored. And listen, I just named you, what was that now? 6 games out of their 8 losses that were 1-score losses. You're telling me if you put, let's say, think of a great QB. So for me, my top 5 QBs, if you throw in Deshaun Watson instead of Dak Prescott in those games, how many do you think they win? I don't think he wins all of them, but I do think he goes 4-2. Yeah. Russell Wilson maybe goes 4 or 5 wins. Patrick Mahomes might win them all. And that's what a great QB does. You put Aaron Rodgers in there even, I bet they go 3-3. You put Tom Brady in there, I bet they go 3-3 in those games. Cowboys went 0-6. Dak Prescott couldn't get his team over the hump then. He's got no excuses this year. This year, the Dallas Cowboys, I think they need to make a deep playoff run. And Dak is betting on himself. I hope that he's right and I'm wrong, but I'm looking at the Dallas Cowboys this season. I think that Dak Prescott's going to be regretting not taking 5 years, $175 million. That's my thoughts on that. Okay, so here's some other NFL news. We're going to have no preseason this year for the NFL. So here's my quick take on this. Really, the main thing I would say is it hurts the bubble players when it comes to trying to make that roster. So, when it comes to a lot of undrafted rookies, for example, or players who have been cut from team to team, you need to put together good tape, not only for your team, but for other teams as well when it comes to trying to make a team or if another team wants to trade for you. So it's going to be weird not having those preseason games. But not only that, I think it also has an effect on the rookie class coming up. Now, not having a couple games to keep up with the speed of the NFL is going to be a little different. Joe Burrow might struggle more than I thought he would at the beginning of the year if he can't have a couple games of preseason. Granted, he could get injured, but, Joe Burrow seemed a little ahead of the other QBs anyway. We'll see if this sets him back. I think now, specifically with no preseason, I think it's incredibly smart if you're the Chargers to start Tyrod Taylor for this year. And I think if you're the Dolphins, you start Fitzpatrick at the beginning of the year. Let Tua, let Herbert learn a little bit, and don't throw him right into the Wolves' NFL speed right off the bat. Because we saw what that did to Dwayne Haskins last year. So no preseason, going to be weird for those guys. But also, on the other end, I hate to see preseason injuries. It's the worst. It's just the worst part of preseason. So a couple years ago, I remember Odell Beckham Jr. broke his foot or something like that with the Giants. And it was like, wow, one of the best players in the NFL just went down like that. Edelman tore his ACL a couple years ago for the Patriots. So I like to see it for the lack of injuries. I don't like to see it when it comes to these bubble players and when it comes to the rookies trying to get used to the speed. That's my thoughts on the effects of the NFL preseason being changed. All right, here's a couple quick NBA takes. We'll go to the NBA. The NBA bubble is all set up. We're ready to go for the playoffs, hopefully pretty quick. We're doing, I think it's 8 games or 9 games before the playoffs start. First thing I want to say is I'm glad I'm not a Brooklyn Nets fan right now for this season. Because the Brooklyn Nets, if you remember a year ago, we were all on the Brooklyn Nets hype train. At least I was. I was like, woo, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan. That team is going to contend. Those guys are going to be top 4 in the East. I was saying stuff like that. And I knew Kevin Durant was going to miss some time, but I thought they had a lot of positive momentum. This year, with Kyrie leading the team, they're the 7th seed. And they're under 500. It's not that impressive to me. I'm still not a big Kyrie guy. I hate to say it, but what he did in Boston and what he's been doing in Brooklyn so far, not very impressive to me. Again, I'd love to see him prove me wrong. But for this team, not only do you not have Irving and Durant, but also Spencer Dinwiddie, one of their best players, DeAndre Jordan, Taurean Prince, and Wilson Chandler. Those guys are all staying home from the NBA bubble. Who else do you know that's on the Nets? You've got Karis LeVert and, Jared Allen maybe. Otherwise, it's just, who knows playing for the Brooklyn Nets. Not what the Brooklyn Nets fans expected a year ago today. That's just all I'm going to say. However, they are setting themselves up for next year, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is this team wanted to contend this year. They're the 7 seed. They'll probably hold on to a playoff spot and get blown out in the first round by a Milwaukee or a Toronto. Hate to see it, but it's just a weird year for the Brooklyn Nets. We will get to see some more minutes for 40-year-old Jamal Crawford, though. Yeah. All right, so now let's move over to the Golden State Warriors. You may be somebody who's been celebrating the Warriors dynasty coming to an end. I sure was for a little bit. But the more I think about it, I'm going to put in the call right now. The 2021 Warriors are a top 3 seed in the West next year. It's pretty crazy. They're 15-50, right? You're thinking, wow, Ben, you've lost your mind. I might have lost my mind, but here's what I'm thinking. So I think that Curry, Thompson, and Draymond being back throws them back in the playoff mix no matter what. Clay's coming back from an ACL. Curry's had hand issues this year, and Draymond's been on and off the court. This year, if you watch a Warriors game, they're unrecognizable from last year's team. Legit, I mean, you don't know the names out there. It's Andrew Wiggins and a bunch of guys. So I think all of those guys coming back are going to help. Plus, Andrew Wiggins is going to be there next year. Andrew Wiggins is a weird player for me. It's very easy to call him a bust. I don't think I'm going to call him a bust because he can score. But he is very, very overpaid right now. He's getting paid, what is that, a 5-year, $148 million contract the Wolves gave him. He's still got 3 years of contract into that. If he can fit in Golden State, I don't hate it. I think if you put him in KD's spot in their system, I don't hate it because he can do some of the things KD can do. Not at the level KD can do it, but I think he can help the team. So I think he's a good factor compared to a negative factor for their team next year. So you're going to have Wiggins there with Thompson, Green, and Curry. But then also, this team finished last, and with that 15-50 record, they're going to have the number 1 pick. So they tanked perfectly because now they're set up to get Anthony Edwards or whoever else it could be. Well, obviously, they might not have the number 1 pick because obviously there's a draft lottery for the NBA. But say they get a top pick, because they might. You could get a top prospect to throw in as well. So Golden State, basically after taking a year off, pump the brakes, your players are going to be coming back from injury, you're grabbing a top draft pick, and you added in Andrew Wiggins with a year of experience with your team. I think they're a dangerous squad as is with that. But then you add in this factor. The Golden State Warriors look like a contender to me on paper, but they're going to be reloaded, healthy, and rested. While the rest of these contenders that we're going to see, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Mavericks, those teams, the Rockets, those teams are all going to have played in the NBA bubble and played these playoffs deep into the season. I'm talking weeks and weeks and weeks into the year. And, I mean, when is the season supposed to end? Like September, something like that? Then they're only going to have a few weeks to recover for the next season of basketball. The Golden State Warriors will be well rested and ready to roll, while these teams that are at the top of the West now, they will have, been battling over the summer and been battling deep into the fall trying to win a title. I mean, it's a factor. I hate to say it, it's a factor. So I think that's why I think the Warriors are a top 3 seed in the West next year. Don't write them off yet. Watch out for Steve Kerr's team. They're still there, and they're still a problem for the rest of the NBA, I think. So don't write them off yet. Okay, so we're almost at the end of the show here. Let's do some quick hits. Here's some quick opinions on some things I saw this week. Derrick Henry, I think my quick opinion on him is he sacrificed a bit of money to get the extension signed because of everything going on. He's the 5th highest paid running back, although I feel like he's probably a top 3 running back in the NFL. And I think he's one of the few running backs that can legitimately carry a team. So Derrick Henry extension, I think it makes sense for him to get the money, get what he can, get it guaranteed. But I think he's one of the guys who's a danger to be cut year 3, year 4, when the Titans may be he's a little bit older, maybe some injuries, and just wash our hands of him. He'll get the money he's got, but not a crazy extension, just a solid extension. Security for Henry and top running back playing happy for the Titans. Mookie Betts extension for the Dodgers, though. He's the 2nd best player in baseball, in my opinion. 12 years, $365 million. This tells me that the coronavirus has not ended Major League Baseball's money flow as much as they're saying, the owners. Because the owners have been saying, we're losing money every game we play, right? That's been the line throughout all of these negotiations. And how they're scared they're going to go bankrupt. You're hearing this with a couple of teams. And they've been cutting minor league players. Well, the Dodgers just shelled out $365 million to Mookie Betts. I think that we're still in a healthy spot when it comes to extensions for players. I was worried it would back things up. We'll see. Mookie Betts, good fit with the Dodgers. Dodgers, obviously, a lot more money than a lot of the conventional teams do. But I think this is still a sign that Major League Baseball, when it comes to spending sprees and player contracts, we're not in a crazy spot yet when it comes to that reversing 15 years. I think we're still moving in the right direction. And big money for Mookie Betts. I love it. He's there till he's 38. That's a win for Mookie Betts, specifically with everything going on in the world. That's a lot of guaranteed money because MLB contracts are completely guaranteed. That's why Prince Fielder is one of the top paid Rangers players right now. He's out with a neck injury. Major League contracts are guaranteed. Mookie Betts is guaranteed that $365 million over the next 12 years. Love to see it. All right, stop freaking out over the Madden ratings. I mean, it's just a video game, and their appeal is to make the personalities and the flashy players fun to play. So Rob Gronkowski may not be a 95 anymore on the football field, but if you're trying to get people to buy their video game, right, there's fun to throwing the ball up and letting Gronkowski go up and make the catch. So I'm okay with it. 95 for him. It's the appeal. It's a sexy player to put on there. He is better in Madden, I would guess, than the hobbled Gronk we saw at the end of 2018. So we'll see how good he's going to be this year. I hope he's going to be really good because I like the Bucs. But Rob Gronkowski's rating, something a lot of people are angry about. A lot of the other ratings. Also, a part of it for the Madden franchise also could be ignite some outrage, get people to talk about their game. And it's been working for him. So that's an opinion on that. Last week, Jonathan Kuninga, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's not quite there yet. He's a top recruit in basketball and a potential top 5 pick in 2021. He decided to choose the G League over NCAA. So this is a big deal. And the NCAA, obviously, does not pay their basketball players. And with the coronavirus and all of the question marks surrounding it, this is the first of, I'm guessing, many dominoes that will fall to college basketball maybe not being the same when we come back. Because college basketball, you're asking a lot of players to sacrifice a lot to be a part of it anyways. I mean, we're talking normally with taking a year like Zion at Duke, although they might have paid Zion, who knows. But like say if we're in a perfect world and they're following all the rules, you don't pay a player and they're coming there risking injury to play for your team even though they would be a guaranteed top pick. That's what Kuninga could have done. But instead, he decided to go to the G League and get paid and play a little bit of, not quite NBA experience, but close to it, and do that instead this year. I like it, and I'm worried about NCAA after that because other players might make that decision too. Okay, and my last quick take, Chris Archer. He's going to miss the whole season with thoracic outlet syndrome surgery. That's something that goes on with your arm. He's a Pirates pitcher. He's actually their highest paid player right now. It's hard to imagine Pittsburgh picking up that $11 million option for next season for Chris Archer. I hate to say it because Chris Archer used to be very, very good. He was traded there from Tampa Bay. And so this trade might go down as one of the worst in baseball history for the Pirates because they gave up Tyler Glasnow, Austin Meadows, and Shane Baz. So Glasnow looked like a Cy Young candidate last year before he was injured, and I think he's going to win the Cy Young this year from earlier in the video. I think that he's amazing. The spin rate he has on his fastballs, he's pretty incredible. You watch him, he pops off the screen. So that's number one. Meadows, he was an all-star last year. He outfield and DH type guy, going to hit about 30 home runs, 100 RBIs in a normal season. And Austin Meadows is another guy who very well could be a franchise type outfielder. So they got him as well back in this trade. And then Shane Baz looks like he could be a great reliever, incredible slider. I'm looking forward to seeing him pitch in Tampa Bay. He's still young. He's only 21. So that package came for Chris Archer, who at the time was a borderline ace. Over his time in Pittsburgh, 2.5 total seasons, he'll finish with a 4.92 ERA, over 172 innings pitched. That's a lot of player capital to be giving away for that kind of performance. Going to look bad for the Pirates in the future. It looked bad at the time, I'll be honest, because at the time the Pirates were kind of lukewarm contenders. I mean, not even really in it. They just kind of got a little bit hot before the deadline. They were still 5-6 games back, if I remember right. And then they shocked the world and made this trade. Missed the playoffs anyway. Then were terrible last year. They're going to be bad this year. And now they're without two potential big-time building blocks for Chris Archer, who didn't give him much production. So that's part of baseball, but could be one of the worst trades in baseball history. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm Ben Cason. This has been Off the Air Productions. If you like it or want to tell me something about what I said, go to the comment section. Let me know what you think. I would really appreciate it. Love some interaction there. Go and subscribe to us here at Off the Air Productions on our YouTube channel, as well as if you're listening to this on Spotify, go ahead and give us a like. You can save some of our stuff. We'd really appreciate it. And then also go check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we'll be posting stuff, keeping updates going. And watch out for this show every week. I'll keep doing it as long as you guys are liking it. I really enjoyed putting it together. Can't wait for the season. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to being it with you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.